Welcome to the final of the Magnus Carlsen Invitational. In the semi-finals, Nakamura beat Caruana on the 1st of May, and yesterday, Magnus Carlsen beat Dingley Ren to reach the final. So here we have it, Nakamura versus Carlsen. In this video, I will be checking out the best game between them in this matchup. Let's begin. Carlsen has white, Nakamura has black. The game began d4, knight f6, c4, e6, knight f3, d5, knight c3, bishop e7. Once again, Nakamura plays the Queen's Gambit declined. Bishop f4, castle e3, and knight d7. Nakamura has played this throughout this tournament and in his career. And he faced c5 and bishop d3 so many times, none of this anymore. A quieter line by Magnus, bishop e2. In previous games, we have seen this so many times. c5 locking it up, but black gets the bishop pair with knight h5. After bishop d3, take, b6, attacking the structure. So b4, a5, a3, c6, castle, bishop a6. And this has been seen many times. But in this game, bishop e2 chosen by Carlsen. D takes c4 and now castle. Black has a few moves here. He can play knight b6, knight d5. But in the game, Nakamura chose to create another pawn break with c5. Nakamura striking in the center with c5, getting the c and the d pawns off the board. Take, bishop takes c5, and now bishop takes c4. The other option was to play knight takes c5, which looks okay, and after bishop takes c4, this is a completely different variation. The queens tend to come off, and if you want to see an almost perfect game by white, check out Dingley Ren versus Firouzja in the World Cup in September 2019. Back to this game, Nakamura chose bishop takes c5, bishop c4. The queen can come to e2 now. a6 planning b5, the queen can come to e7, just chasing the bishop away. Knight g5, Carlsen is ready to sacrifice, and Nakamura invites him right into the position. Queen e7 was possible. Now the bishop on c4 doesn't look too useful, so it is possible to tuck it back, rerouting it to this diagonal. b6 and b5 are possible. So let's have a look at b5, and just to show why this might not be the best option. So there's a very subtle difference. Bishop f3, the bishops look amazing. Rook has to go to a7. White plays a3, threatening b4, just gaining space. And I wanted to look at this line because there's a nice tactic. If black goes b4, then you can actually play a takes b4, bishop takes b4, and knight b5. The rook on a7 is trapped. Wow. Can't move anywhere to b7 or to c7 because one of the bishops will pick it up. Instead of b5, it's possible to play b6, defending the bishop. Bishop f3, rook a7, rook c1. The game goes on. White is a bit better here. The knight on g5, it can reroute to e4, but at least this bishop is defended by a pawn, not only defended by the knight and the queen. Back to the game, Nakamura played b5. Bishop takes e6. What else? Take, knight takes e6, and black has a few options. In the game, he chose queen e7. Knight takes f8, queen takes f8. The imbalance is clear. Rook and two pawns versus a knight and a bishop. Carlsen now plays knight e4, a nice tactical shot. You can't play knight takes e4 because queen d5 check will pick up the rook on a8. So bishop b7 was chosen. Now this move, it does give up the bishop pair with knight takes c5. So I was wondering, was there another option, maybe just tucking the bishop back to b6? But then, it just looks so dangerous with a knight on d6. The queen can go to b3 with check. The rook can go to c1. It's very difficult for black to solve his problems. So Nakamura had to give up the bishop pair with bishop b7. Take, rook c1, queen d5, threatening checkmate on g2. And here Carlsen stops it but not by swapping off queens, but by playing f3, a big decision to not swap, giving up the a-pawn for some time. Queen takes a2 played in the game. Why not queen takes d1? Because rook takes d1, and the rooks look amazing on the c and the d file. So what if black has a knight and a bishop for the rook? Rook c8, trying to swap off one of the really powerful rooks. Take, rook c1. Going for the c file. Bishop b7, rook c7. Infiltrating, bishop d5 and b3. e4 is next to chase the bishop. The rook can go to a7. And white is taking over in this ending. Back to the game, queen takes a2 played. White now goes e4. It is vital to control the d5 square. Then white can play rook c7 next. So e4 played, knight f8. Black cannot be greedy with queen takes b2 because rook c7 and you're attacking the bishop on b7 and the knight on d7. If bishop c8, which looks like a tragic move, white can just go forward with e5 and it's over. The knight on f6, it controls the d5 square, so if you move the knight back, queen d5 check once again. Knight f8 played, rook f2, giving options. The rook can go to c2 or to d2. Rook c8. Alexander Grishuk in the Chess24 commentary criticized this move. He said Nakamura really should not have traded rooks. Maybe another option was just to go queen e6. And if rook d2, rook e8. Keeping the rooks on, giving black some chances to defend. If rook d6, then queen f7. Queen looks well placed on f7 because it's controlling this diagonal. And the game goes on. Rook c8, Nakamura trades rooks. Take, and queen d8. Carlsen shows his plans. He wants to go into an ending where his rook and 2 pawns will prove to be too strong. The queen has to retreat because the queen on d8 is threatening bishop d6, forcing black to trade queens with queen e8. Take, and bishop b4, stopping black's majority. It is as if black does not have a queenside majority. Bishop b4 was a superb move, which Grishuk heavily praised in the Chess24 commentary. Knight e6, rook d2, king f7, king f2. Knight f6, king e3. King is getting closer to the center. g5. It would be ideal if black could swap off his kingside pawns. Rook d6, knight d7, g3. Heading to e5, knight c4 checks, so Carlsen just stops it with b3 and he is ready. Black just does not have enough pawns here. White can go f4, maybe prepare it with h3, starting to take over. It is 4 versus 2 on the king side. h5. Black hopes to trade pawns, getting closer to a draw, but Carlsen now plays a huge move with h4. This is huge because it gives white an isolated h-pawn. But why do this? Because it gives white another target on h5. Even though white's pawn is isolated, so is black's. Take, knight g6, and bishop e1. Defending and ready to go after the h5 pawn later. Wow. a5 was played in the game. And we will look at this very soon as to why this is not best. Another option was b4, just to provide a distraction. So if you take the pawn, then knight h4 and rook can come back to d2. And f4 is next. For example, you can't go f4 here because knight g2 check is a big problem. The king moves and then you take on f4. So rook d2 first and f4 next. Also, the bishop on b4, it can improve its placement. Knight g6, bishop d6, f4 is next, rook h2, f5. White controls the entire board. However, back to the game, Nakamura played a5, leaving the b5 and h5 pawns under attack. So pause the video to find the tactic. What can white play just to attack both pawns at the same time? I'll give you 5 seconds. The move is rook d5. Black is in big trouble. Nakamura now played a4, and Carlsen now played rook takes h5. Wow. He is allowing a pass pawn, allowing black to take on b3. But first, knight f4 was played, so if ab3 you can just go bishop c3, which Carlsen does in the game anyway. However, knight f4 played, it will lead to the same thing. Rook g5, a great move because it threatens h5, but also it defends from knight g2 check. So rook g5 is a superb move. A takes b3, and not bishop c3 right now. Carlsen can do it, but he goes h5 first. Knight f8 played. You can't play b2 because you can take with check, take, and rook takes b5. And black cannot queen, so back to the game, knight f8, bishop c3. It's as if the pawns don't exist. The b pawns cannot move. b4, bishop back to b2, knight e6, and now Carlsen cleans up. Another option was to put the other knight back to e6, which may be better. But rook b5, Carlsen will clean up another way, planning to grab all the b pawns. It looks as if the queen side will just fall. Bishop d7, rook takes b4, knight c5, and bishop d4. Time to give this super bishop up, because then the king can march itself forward. If knight e6, take, king d4, knight e6 check, king e5, the pawn will drop. You can go knight c5, but then king d6. Attacking both knight and bishop, white is winning. Back to the game, Nakamura chose knight 8 to e6, and pause the video to find the tactic. How did Carlsen clean up? Simplifying into a 1 endgame. I'll give you 5 seconds. White now played rook f5 check. King g8, rook takes f4. This is the point. Rook for the 2 knights. Take. Bishop a6. King g5. Peter Svidler mentioned, if it is 2 pawns then it may be a draw, but with 3 passed pawns there is no chance. Bishop d3. King g6. Ready to go h6, h7 check. Bishop b5, f4. If you go bishop d3, you can go king f5 and then the pawn can run, or you might even go f5. I think that might be even better. Yeah, that's a really cool one. Bishop e4, h6, that's it. h7 check, you can't stop it, so that was cool. A nice finish there, but bishop e8 check was played. King g5, bishop c6, e5, bishop d5, f5. You cannot stop the entire party. King h7, e6, bishop c4, king f6, bishop e2, and now king e7, making room for the f-pawn to queen. Here black resigned. If play continued, bishop takes h5, f6 is the problem. The king on e7 controls the queening square, there is no way to stop it. If king g8, just f7, check. Take, you just take back, and then you get a queen. 1-0 to Carlsen. Carlsen ended up winning the match 2.5, 1.5. Here are the final standings. Dingley Run and Caruana, $30,000 each. Second place Nakamura, Carlsen first with $70,000. If you want to go back and check out some of the other videos from this tournament, check out a playlist here. Check out one video here and another video over here. If you enjoy the show, why not like it and subscribe at the same time? Don't forget to hit that bell to get notified each time I release a new video. Thank you so much for watching.